The days following the activation of the Titan Forge felt like a dream. Earth was alive in ways it hadn't been for centuries. The skies were clearer, the air fresher, and the oceans teemed with life once more. People walked the streets with their heads held high, no longer burdened by the weight of ridicule and oppression. For the first time in generations, humanity dared to hope not just for survival, but for something greater. They had proven themselves not as conquerors, but as innovators, capable of wielding immense power responsibly. And yet, Kale knew this was only the beginning. The Galactic Federation's retreat had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. News of humanity's victory spread quickly, carried by traders, travelers, and spies who whispered about the species that had risen from the ashes. Some viewed humans with newfound respect. Others saw them as a threat that needed to be contained. But one thing was certain: Earth was no longer a laughingstock. It was a force to be reckoned with. Kale stood on the hill overlooking the city, his mind racing with thoughts about what came next. The Titan Forge hummed faintly beneath the surface, its energy now woven into the fabric of Earth itself. It wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience and potential. But Kale couldn't shake the feeling that their fight wasn't over. The Federation might have retreated, but they wouldn't stay away forever. Humanity needed to prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. Back at the Iron Vanguard's headquarters, Dr. Rios called a meeting to discuss their next steps. The room buzzed with excitement as members shared ideas and plans for rebuilding Earth and establishing humanity's presence in the galaxy. Kale listened quietly, letting the voices wash over him. He admired their optimism, but he also knew how fragile their newfound freedom was. One misstep could undo everything they had achieved. "We need to reach out to other oppressed species," Lyra suggested, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "If we can form alliances, we'll have a better chance of standing against the Federation if they return." Dr. Rios nodded thoughtfully. "It's a good idea, but risky. Not all alien races will trust us, not after what happened. We'll need to prove ourselves worthy allies." "What about Zixkra's people?" Rin asked, glancing at the alien mechanic, who was tinkering with a gadget in the corner. His hive mind society might see this as an opportunity to break free too. Zixkra looked up, his mandibles clicking softly. "It's possible," he admitted. "But convincing them won't be easy. My kind values order above all else. They won't join us unless they're certain we can succeed." Kale stepped forward, drawing everyone's attention. "Then we'll make them certain," he said firmly. "We've already proven we can stand up to the Federation. Now we need to show the galaxy that we're not just survivors, we're leaders." The room fell silent as his words sank in. Kale's confidence was contagious, and slowly the others began to nod in agreement. They had come too far to stop now. If humanity wanted to reclaim its place among the stars, they would need to do more than defend themselves. They would need to inspire others. Over the next few weeks, the Iron Vanguard worked tirelessly to establish communication with alien species across the galaxy. Messages were sent via encrypted channels, offering support and solidarity to those suffering under the Federation's rule. At first, responses were cautious, even hostile. Many doubted humanity's intentions, fearing they might be lured into a trap. But as stories of Earth's resurgence spread, some began to listen. One such group was a coalition of refugees, known as the Free Stars, a loose alliance of species who had fled Federation-controlled territories in search of safety. Their leader, a tall, silver-skinned alien named Varen, agreed to meet with Kale and his team aboard a neutral space station. The encounter was tense at first, with both sides wary of betrayal. But as Kale spoke about humanity's struggles and triumphs, Varen's expression softened. "You've done what many thought impossible," Varen said, leaning back in her chair. "You faced the Federation and lived to tell the tale. That alone earns my respect." Kale nodded, grateful for the acknowledgement. "We didn't do it alone," he replied. "And we don't plan to move forward alone either. If we work together, we can create a galaxy where no one has to live in fear." Baron considered his words for a moment before extending a hand. "Then let us begin." With the free stars as their first ally, humanity's influence began to grow. Word of their partnership inspired others to join the cause, forming a coalition unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Species that had once dismissed humans as weak now looked to them as leaders, united by a shared desire for freedom and justice. Meanwhile, back on Earth, life continued to improve. Cities were rebuilt, powered by clean energy harvested from the Titan Forge. Schools reopened, teaching children about humanity's past achievements and encouraging them to dream big. The scars of centuries of neglect were slowly healing, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. But Kale didn't allow himself to rest. He spent his days traveling between Earth and the growing network of allied worlds, strengthening bonds and laying the groundwork for a brighter future. He often found himself reflecting on how far humanity had come from being mocked and ridiculed to becoming a beacon of hope for the oppressed. It was a transformation he never could have imagined when he first discovered the artifact in the ruins outside the city. One evening, as he stood on the same hill where he had watched the Federation retreat, Kale felt a sense of peace wash over him. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Below him, the city sparkled with lights, a testament to humanity's enduring spirit. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had turned a corner. "Penny for your thoughts?" a voice asked behind him. Kale turned to see Lyra approaching, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. She smiled softly, joining him at the edge of the hill. "I was thinking about how much has changed," he admitted. "Not just here on Earth, but across the galaxy. We've given so many people a reason to hope again." Lyra nodded, gazing out at the horizon. "It's amazing what can happen when people come together for a common goal. You should be proud of what you've done, Kale. None of this would have been possible without you." Kale shook his head, brushing off the compliment. "This wasn't about me. It was about all of us, every human who refused to give up, every ally who chose to stand with us. We did this together." Lyra chuckled softly. "Still, you led the way. That counts for something." They stood in silence for a while, watching as the first stars appeared in the night sky. Finally, Kale spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. "The galaxy remembers us now," he said. "Not as weak or chaotic, but as fighters, as survivors. And if anyone tries to take that away from us again, they'll regret it." Lyra smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, we'll be ready." As they made their way back toward the city, Kale couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not just in himself, but in his entire species. Humanity had been knocked down countless times, but they had always found a way to rise again. They had proven that strength wasn't measured by weapons or technology, but by the courage to keep going. No matter how dire the odds dot in the distance, the Titan Forge pulsed faintly, its energy a constant reminder of what they had achieved and what they were capable of achieving in the future. The galaxy had laughed at humanity for centuries, dismissing them as insignificant. But now, they remembered why they should be feared, and this time, they wouldn't forget. The final fragment of the Titan Forge was hidden on Earth itself, buried deep beneath the ruins of an ancient city swallowed by time and neglect. Kale and his team had traveled across the galaxy, facing countless dangers to retrieve the other pieces. But now they were back where it all began. The weight of their mission pressed heavily on them as they prepared for what might be their most perilous challenge yet. The Galactic Federation's invasion fleet was already en route to Earth, intent on eradicating humanity once and for all. If they couldn't activate the Titan Forge in time, everything they had fought for would be lost. Kale stood at the edge of the excavation site, staring down into the gaping hole that marked the entrance to the underground chamber. The air smelled of damp soil and rusted metal, remnants of a world long forgotten. Around him, members of the Iron Vanguard worked tirelessly, digging through layers of debris to uncover the last piece of the puzzle. Dr. Rios paced nearby, her face tense with urgency. "We don't have much time," she said, glancing at the sky. "The Federation will be here within hours." Kale nodded, gripping the straps of his backpack tightly. Inside it were the 3 fragments they had retrieved from across the galaxy, each one glowing faintly as though aware of its purpose. He could feel the hum of energy radiating from them, a constant reminder of the power they held and the responsibility resting on his shoulders. "Let's get this done," he said firmly. Stepping forward, with the help of the Iron Vanguard, Kale descended into the chamber. The walls were lined with crumbling stone, etched with symbols and carvings that told stories of humanity's past glory. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, its surface cracked and worn but still intact. Resting atop, it was the final fragment, a gleaming shard of metal that pulsed with a steady, golden light. Kale approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the culmination of everything they had worked toward. He reached out and carefully lifted the fragment, feeling its warmth seep into his hands. For a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the significance of the moment wash over him. Humanity's future depended on this. "Bring the others," he called over his shoulder. Lyra, Rin, and Zixkra hurried forward, carrying tools and equipment needed to assemble the Titan Forge. Together, they placed the 4 fragments onto the pedestal, aligning them according to the diagrams provided by Dr. Rios. As the pieces connected, a low hum filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. The fragments began to glow brighter, their combined energy creating a blinding aura that lit up the entire room. "It's working," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. But Kale knew they weren't out of danger yet. Activating the Titan Forge required more than just assembling the pieces. It demanded someone to control it, to channel its immense power. And that someone had to be him. "I'll do it," he said, stepping closer to the pedestal. "No," Dr. Rios shouted, grabbing his arm. "You don't understand what you're risking. The Titan Forge isn't just a weapon, it's a force of nature. If you lose control, it could destroy us all." Kale met her gaze, his expression resolute. "If I don't try, we're already dead. I won't let humanity go down without a fight." Dr. Rios hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. She stepped back, allowing Kale to take his place at the pedestal. He placed his hands on the glowing fragments, feeling their energy surge through him like a tidal wave. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he thought he might pass out. But then, clarity washed over him, and he realized he could feel the forge responding to his presence. Above ground, the first signs of the Federation's arrival became visible. Ships descended from the sky, their sleek forms casting long shadows over the landscape. Troops poured out, armed with advanced weapons and technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. The Iron Vanguard readied themselves for battle, knowing full well they were outnumbered and outmatched. But they fought anyway, driven by hope and desperation. Inside the chamber, Kale struggled to maintain control of the Titan Forge. Its power was overwhelming, threatening to consume him entirely. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of humanity's past triumphs and failures, moments of courage and cowardice. He saw the faces of those who had come before him, their voices urging him to persevere. "You can do this," Lyra said softly, standing beside him. "We believe in you." Kale took a deep breath, focusing all his energy on the task at hand. Slowly, he began to guide the forge's power outward, shaping it into a shield that enveloped the excavation site. The Federation forces outside froze in confusion as their weapons suddenly ceased functioning. Their ships hovered motionless in the air, their engines silenced by an unseen force. "What's happening?" one of the alien commanders demanded, his voice crackling over a communicator. "It's the humans," another replied, his tone laced with fear. "They've activated something. Something we don't understand." Kale pushed harder, expanding the forge's influence until it covered the entire planet. Earth's skies cleared, revealing stars that hadn't been visible in centuries due to pollution and neglect. The oceans shimmered with renewed vitality, and the land itself seemed to breathe easier under the forge's protective embrace. But Kale didn't stop there. He directed the forge's energy toward the Federation fleet, disabling their weapons and rendering their ships inert. He didn't destroy them, he simply neutralized their ability to harm. It was a message, not just to the Federation, but to the entire galaxy. Humanity wasn't weak or chaotic. They were capable of wielding immense power responsibly. As the last of the Federation forces retreated, Kale collapsed to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. The Titan Forge dimmed slightly, its energy stabilizing as it settled into its new role as Earth's guardian. Around him, the Ion Vanguard erupted into cheers, tears streaming down their faces as they realized what they had achieved. Outside, the people of Earth emerged from hiding, gazing up at the sky in wonder. For the first time in centuries, they felt a sense of pride, not just in themselves, but in their species as a whole. The mockery and ridicule they had endured for so long no longer mattered. They had proven their worth, not through violence or destruction, but through resilience and ingenuity. Kale sat quietly amidst the celebration, his mind racing with thoughts about what came next. The Galactic Federation had been humbled, but they wouldn't forget this defeat easily. Humanity's journey was far from over, but for now, they had earned a reprieve, a chance to rebuild and reclaim their place among the stars. As night fell, Kale climbed to the top of a nearby hill, looking out over the horizon. The lights of the city flickered below, a testament to humanity's enduring spirit. He thought about the sacrifices made along the way, the lives lost and the friendships forged. And he thought about the future, a future where humans would stand tall, proud and unafraid. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Kale knew one thing for certain: humanity wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. The journey through the galaxy was unlike anything Kale had ever imagined. Each fragment of the Titan Forge led them to a new location, each more dangerous and unpredictable than the last. After retrieving the second piece from the volcanic moon, the team barely had time to catch their breath before setting off for their next destination. The stakes were high, and every moment counted. If they failed to recover all the fragments in time, humanity's chance at redemption would slip away forever. Their third stop was an abandoned orbital station floating in the void between two uninhabited planets. Once a hub of trade and commerce, the station had been left to decay after its systems malfunctioned, leaving it overrun by rogue AI drones programmed to eliminate intruders. Dr. Rios had warned them about this place. She called it the Ghost Station. No one who entered ever came back out alive. But the map showed that one of the Titan Forge fragments was hidden deep within its core, guarded by layers of automated defenses. As their ship docked with the station, Kale felt a chill run down his spine. The station loomed ahead, its skeletal frame illuminated faintly by the distant glow of a dying star. Broken windows stared back like empty eye sockets, and the silence outside was oppressive. Inside, the air smelled stale, as though it hadn't moved in centuries. The lights flickered erratically, casting long shadows on the walls. "Stay alert," Rin said, his voice low but firm. He carried a rifle slung over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the darkness. "These drones are fast, and they don't care who you are." Kale nodded, gripping the handle of his plasma cutter tightly. Beside him, Lara adjusted her scanner, which hummed softly as it searched for signs of movement. Zixkra tinkered with a small device in his hands, muttering under his breath about jamming signals. They moved cautiously, sticking close together as they made their way deeper into the station. It wasn't long before the first drone appeared. Its sleek, metallic body glided silently across the ceiling, its red sensors locking onto them instantly. Without hesitation, it launched itself at the group, sparks flying from its claws as it struck. Rin fired first, hitting the drone square in the chest. It crashed to the ground, twitching violently before going still. More coming, Zixkra shouted, pointing to the corridor ahead. Sure enough, a swarm of drones descended upon them, their mechanical limbs clicking ominously. Kale ducked behind a fallen beam as bolts of energy zipped past his head. Lyra crouched beside him, her face pale but determined. We need to disable their central processor, she yelled over the chaos. Otherwise, they'll keep coming. Kale nodded, understanding what she meant. If they could find the station's control room, they might be able to shut down the drones temporarily. But getting there wouldn't be easy, not with an army of machines hunting them. Follow me, Rin barked, leading the charge down a narrow hallway. The team sprinted after him, dodging blasts of energy as they went. Behind them, the sound of clanking metal grew louder, signaling that the drones were closing in. Finally, they reached a heavy steel door marked with faded symbols. Zixkra worked quickly, bypassing the lock with his makeshift hacking tool. The door slid open with a groan, revealing a dimly lit chamber filled with rows of humming servers. In the center of the room stood a massive console, the station's mainframe. This is it, Lyra said, rushing to the console. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she tried to access the system. Give me a minute. Kale and Rin positioned themselves near the entrance, ready to fend off any attackers. Zixkra knelt beside Lyra, helping her reroute power to the station's defenses. Outside, the sound of approaching drones grew deafening. They're here, Rin shouted, firing blindly into the corridor. Kale joined him, aiming his plasma cutter at the advancing swarm. Sparks flew as the drones surged forward, relentless and unyielding. Just when it seemed like they were about to be overwhelmed, Lyra let out a triumphant cry. I did it, she exclaimed, slamming her hand down on the console. The lights in the room flickered, then dimmed completely. For a brief moment, everything went silent. When the power returned, the drones lay motionless on the floor, their glowing eyes extinguished. The team exhaled in relief, their bodies trembling from adrenaline. Good work, Rin said, lowering his weapon. Now let's grab that fragment and get out of here. Lyra guided them to a secure vault located at the rear of the control room. Inside, they found the third piece of the Titan Forge, a jagged shard of metal pulsating with a faint green light. Kale carefully placed it in his backpack alongside the others. Feeling a surge of pride, despite the exhaustion weighing him down, their next destination was even more daunting. A diplomatic summit held on a neutral planet where alien leaders gathered to negotiate treaties and alliances. One of the fragments was rumored to be hidden in the summit's archives, protected by advanced security measures. To retrieve it, Kale and his team would have to blend in among the delegates without raising suspicion. Disguises were arranged, thanks to Zixkra, who used his skills to forge official-looking uniforms and forged credentials. Kale studied the roles they would play, memorizing lines and mannerisms to avoid drawing attention. When they arrived at the summit, the grandeur of the event took his breath away. Towering spires of glass and steel stretched toward the sky, surrounded by lush gardens and shimmering fountains. Alien dignitaries strolled along paved walkways, their colorful robes and intricate armor reflecting the sunlight. Remember, Rin whispered as they entered the building. Act natural. Don't make eye contact unless necessary. They navigated the crowded halls, blending seamlessly with the crowd. Lyra kept her gaze fixed on her scanner, guiding them toward the archive room. Security checkpoints were everywhere, but Zixkra's forged papers allowed them to pass without issue. Finally, they reached the archive, a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and rows of data crystals. Kale spotted the fragment almost immediately. It rested inside a transparent containment unit, its surface etched with swirling patterns that seemed to shift and dance. A single guard stood nearby, his posture rigid and alert. "We need a distraction," Kale murmured to the group. "Something big enough to draw him away." Zixkra grinned mischievously. "Leave that to me." Moments later, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. The guard turned sharply, rushing toward the source of the noise. While he was distracted, Kale slipped past him and approached the containment unit. Using a small device provided by Zixkra, he disabled the locking mechanism and retrieved the fragment. His heart raced as he slipped it into his bag, careful not to make a sound. "Got it," he whispered, rejoining the others. They exited the archive just as alarms began blaring throughout the building. Someone must have noticed the disturbance caused by Zixkra's antics. The team quickened their pace, weaving through panicked delegates as Federation enforcers flooded the area. "Run!" Rin shouted, breaking into a sprint. They burst out of the building and dashed toward their ship, which waited hidden in a nearby grove of trees. Behind them, shouts and laser fire filled the air, but they didn't look back. Reaching the vessel, they scrambled aboard and lifted off just as a squadron of Federation ships appeared on the horizon. "That was too close," Lyra gasped, collapsing into a seat. "Way too close." Kale nodded, clutching the backpack containing the fragments tightly. Despite the danger, they had succeeded. 3 pieces of the Titan Forge were now in their possession, bringing them one step closer to their goal. But as they streaked through space, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest challenges still lay ahead. News of Project Reckoning, the Galactic Federation's plan to eradicate humanity, had reached them during their travels. Time was running out, and the Federation was closing in. If they hoped to activate the Titan Forge and save Earth, they would need to move faster than ever before. For now, though, Kale allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He thought about the people counting on him, the millions of humans living under the shadow of ridicule and oppression. He thought about the sacrifices made by those who came before him, fighting to keep the dream of humanity alive. And he thought about the future, a future where humans would stand tall once more, proud and unafraid. Whatever happened next, Kale knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't give up. Not now, not ever. Kale woke up early the next morning, his mind racing with thoughts about the artifact. He hadn't slept much, but he didn't feel tired. The weight of what he had discovered pressed heavily on him, and he knew he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. If this object truly held the key to humanity's resurgence, then it needed to be shared with people who could understand its importance. But trusting others wasn't easy, not when the Galactic Federation was always watching, always listening. After a quick breakfast of stale bread and weak tea, Kale packed the artifact carefully into his backpack. He double-checked his tools, ensuring he had everything he might need in case something went wrong. Then, taking a deep breath, he stepped outside. The streets were quiet at this hour, though not for long. Soon, alien tourists would flood the area, snapping pictures and laughing at the humans they saw as little more than curiosities. Kale ignored them, keeping his head down as he made his way toward the outskirts of the city. His destination was an old subway station that had been abandoned decades ago. Few people even remembered it existed, which made it the perfect hiding spot for the Iron Vanguard, a secret group of human scientists, engineers, and resistance fighters. Kale had heard rumors about them growing up. whispers of a hidden enclave working tirelessly to reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy. Some dismissed the stories as myths, but Cale believed. Now, he hoped they would believe in him too. The entrance to the station was hidden behind a pile of rubble, camouflaged so well that only someone who knew exactly where to look would find it. Cale moved the debris aside and slipped through the narrow opening. Inside, the air was cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of rust and mildew. Faint lights flickered along the walls, guiding him deeper underground. As he descended, the sound of dripping water echoed around him, adding to the eerie atmosphere dotted the bottom of the stairs. Cale found himself face to face with two guards. They wore patched-up uniforms and carried makeshift weapons, clear signs that they weren't part of any official organization. One of them stepped forward, raising a hand to stop him. "Who are you?" The guard asked gruffly, his voice low and suspicious. "My name is Cale Voss." Cale replied calmly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I've come to speak with the Iron Vanguard." The guards exchanged glances, clearly unsure whether to trust him. Finally, one of them nodded and gestured for Cale to follow. They led him through a series of tunnels until they reached a large chamber filled with people. The room buzzed with activity scientists huddled over workbenches covered in gadgets and blueprints, while others operated ancient computers or pored over stacks of papers. In the center of it all stood a tall woman with sharp features and piercing eyes. She looked up as Cale entered, her expression unreadable. "You're Cale?" she asked, her tone clipped and professional. "Yes," Cale said, stepping forward. "I have something I think you'll want to see." He opened his backpack and carefully removed the artifact, placing it on a nearby table. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look. Even the woman seemed taken aback, though she quickly masked her surprise with a neutral expression. She studied the artifact closely, her fingers tracing the glowing patterns etched into its surface. "What is this?" she asked after a moment. "I don't know exactly," Cale admitted, "but I found it in an old bunker outside the city. It feels important, like it's tied to our past somehow." The woman nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on the artifact. "My name is Dr. Elena Rios," she said finally. "I lead the Iron Vanguard. We've spent years searching for relics like this, one piece of a puzzle that could change everything for us." Cale's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Dr. Rios gestured for him to follow her to a nearby wall covered in diagrams and maps. She pointed to a large image of a massive machine, its design both intricate and awe-inspiring. "This is the Titan Forge," she explained. "It was built during humanity's golden age, before we were cast aside by the rest of the galaxy. The Titan Forge was a superweapon unlike anything else capable of harnessing energy on a cosmic scale. But it was dismantled and scattered across the stars to prevent it from falling into enemy hands." Cale stared at the image, his mind reeling. "Are you saying this artifact is part of the Titan Forge?" "Yes," Dr. Rios confirmed. "And if we can recover the other pieces, we might be able to rebuild it. With the Titan Forge, we could finally stand up to the Galactic Federation and reclaim our rightful place among the stars." The weight of her words hit Cale like a punch to the gut. For centuries, humanity had been mocked and ridiculed, treated as nothing more than a joke. But now, here was a chance not just to fight back, but to prove that humans were still capable of greatness. Still, doubt lingered in the back of his mind. "How do we even begin?" he asked. "The Federation controls most of the galaxy. How are we supposed to find the other pieces without them noticing?" Dr. Rios smiled faintly, though there was no humor in it. "We've already started," she said. "For years, we've been gathering intelligence, tracking down leads, and piecing together clues. But we need someone brave enough to take the next step to go out there and retrieve the fragments ourselves." Cale hesitated. He had known coming here would involve risk, but this was far beyond anything he'd imagined. Yet, as he looked around the room at the determined faces of the Iron Vanguard, he realized he couldn't turn away. This was bigger than him. Bigger than any one person. If humanity was ever going to rise again, someone had to take the first step. "I'll do it," he said firmly. Dr. Rios nodded, seemingly unsurprised by his decision. "Good. You won't be alone, though. I'll assign a team to accompany you. Each member brings something unique to the mission, skills and knowledge we'll need to succeed." Over the next few days, Kale met the others who would join him on the journey. First was Dr. Elira Solis, a brilliant but socially awkward xenobiologist who specialized in studying alien species. Her expertise would be invaluable when dealing with unfamiliar environments and potential threats. Next was Captain Rinalder, a former starship pilot who had been disgraced and stripped of his rank after refusing to follow orders during a Federation raid. Though rough around the edges, Rin was fiercely loyal and skilled at navigating dangerous situations. Finally, there was Zixkra, a rogue alien mechanic exiled from his hive mind society for questioning their rigid hierarchy. Despite being non-human, Zixkra shared the same desire for freedom and justice that drove the rest of the team. Together, they formed an unlikely crew, united by a common goal: to bring hope back to humanity. Before leaving, Dr. Rios provided them with detailed maps and coordinates pointing to the locations of the remaining fragments. Each one was guarded by hostile alien factions or treacherous environments, making the mission perilous at best. But Kale refused to let fear hold him back. He reminded himself why he had started this journey in the first place: to prove that humans weren't weak or insignificant. To remind the galaxy why they should be feared. Their first destination was a volcanic, moon-orbiting a gas giant on the edge of Federation space. According to the maps, one of the Titan Forge fragments was hidden deep within a network of caves carved into the moon's surface. The terrain was harsh and unstable, with rivers of molten lava flowing between jagged rock formations. It was the kind of place that even the bravest explorers avoided, which made it the perfect hiding spot. As they approached the moon in their battered starship, Kale felt a mix of excitement and dread. This was it, the beginning of their quest. Failure wasn't an option. If they succeeded, humanity might finally have a chance to reclaim its dignity. If they failed, well, Kale didn't want to think about that. When they landed, the heat hit them like a wall, forcing them to don protective suits equipped with cooling systems. The ground beneath their feet was black and cracked, radiating warmth even through their boots. Steam rose from fissures in the earth, creating an eerie fog that obscured their vision. Following the map, they began their trek toward the cave's. It didn't take long for trouble to find them. A low growl echoed through the mist, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Suddenly, a creature emerged from the haze, a monstrous beast with glowing red eyes and claws sharp enough to tear through metal. It charged at them, its roar shaking the ground. "Scatter!" Rin shouted, drawing his weapon. Kale dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's swipe. Beside him, Zixkra fired a burst of plasma from his modified blaster, striking the beast in the shoulder. It roared in pain but didn't slow down, lunging at Lara, who froze in terror. Without thinking, Kale grabbed a chunk of rock and hurled it at the creature, distracting it just long enough for Rin to shoot it in the head. The beast collapsed with a final, guttural cry. Breathing heavily, the team regrouped, shaken but alive. "That was close," Lyra muttered, her voice trembling. Kale nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Let's keep moving. We don't have time to waste." They pressed onward, navigating the treacherous landscape until they reached the mouth of the cave. Inside, the air was cooler but thick with sulfuric fumes. Using flashlights, they ventured deeper, following the map's directions. After hours of climbing and crawling, They finally found what they were looking for, a second fragment of the Titan Forge embedded in the wall of the cavern. The galaxy had moved on from Earth long ago. To most of the advanced species that roamed the stars, humanity was nothing more than a footnote, a relic of a bygone era. For centuries, humans had been mocked, ridiculed, and dismissed as irrelevant. The mighty Galactic Federation, an alliance of hyper-intelligent alien races, saw Earth as little more than a curiosity, a backward planet where primitive beings still squabbled over land and resources. Humanity's attempts at space exploration had ended in failure centuries earlier, when they encountered far superior civilizations. Since then, Earth had become a laughingstock, a place aliens visited for amusement rather than respect. Kale Voss hated it all. He stood on the edge of the cracked pavement outside his small workshop, staring up at the sky. The air smelled faintly of rust and decay, remnants of a world that once dreamed big but now struggled just to survive. Overhead, a sleek silver ship zipped past, its engines humming softly. It belonged to one of the many alien tourists who came to gawk at Earth's ruins. Kale clenched his fist tightly, feeling the familiar surge of anger rise within him. How could they treat his people like this? Like animals in a zoo? Kale wasn't old enough to remember the days before Earth fell into obscurity. But he'd heard the stories from his grandfather, a man who used to speak of humanity's golden age, the time when humans dared to reach for the stars. Back then, Earth had been a thriving hub of innovation and ambition. They built rockets, explored moons, and even sent probes deep into the void of space. But their dreams were short-lived. When humanity finally met the rest of the galaxy, they weren't prepared for what awaited them. Alien empires with technology so advanced, it seemed like magic crushed any hope of equality. Humans were quickly labeled as weak, chaotic, and unworthy of joining the interstellar community. Now, nearly 1,000 years later, things hadn't improved much. Earth was still poor, its cities crumbling under neglect. Most of the planet's population lived in squalor, scraping together whatever scraps they could find to survive. Meanwhile, alien visitors strutted around like kings, taking selfies in front of ancient landmarks and buying cheap trinkets made by desperate human artisans. Some humans tried to fight back, organizing protests or sabotaging alien equipment, but such efforts only earned them harsh punishments from the Galactic Federation. Resistance was futile, or so everyone said, but Kale refused to believe it. At 23 years old, Kale was already considered strange among his peers. While others accepted their lot in life, he spent every waking moment tinkering with machines, trying to learn everything he could about technology, both human and alien. His workshop was cluttered with broken gadgets, salvaged parts, and half-finished inventions. To some, it looked like junk. To Kale, it was treasure. He believed that if humanity wanted to reclaim its dignity, they needed to start by mastering the tools of their oppressors. Today, however, Kale wasn't working on anything new. Instead, he was heading out to explore the outskirts of the city, a place few humans dared to go. Beyond the urban sprawl lay the ruins of older settlements, remnants of humanity's past, buried beneath layers of dirt and vegetation. Kale loved exploring these forgotten places. There was something thrilling about uncovering pieces of history, artifacts left behind by ancestors who had dared to dream bigger than anyone thought possible. As he walked, the noise of the city faded away, replaced by the eerie silence of the wilderness. Birds chirped overhead, and the wind whispered through the trees. Kale carried a backpack filled with tools and supplies, along with a scanner device he'd built himself. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough to detect metallic objects hidden underground. He hoped today would bring him luck. Lately, he'd been obsessed with finding evidence of pre-fall technology machines and devices created during humanity's golden age. If he could get his hands on something truly valuable, Maybe he could prove to everyone that humans weren't as useless as the aliens claimed. After hours of searching, Cale finally found what he was looking for. Deep in the forest, partially buried beneath moss and roots, was the entrance to an old bunker. Its steel doors were rusted shut, but Cale's heart raced with excitement. This was exactly the kind of discovery he'd been hoping for. Using a crowbar and some elbow grease, he managed to pry the doors open enough to squeeze inside. The air inside was stale and damp, carrying the faint scent of mildew. Cale switched on his flashlight, illuminating rows of dusty shelves stacked with crates and containers. Most of the items appeared to be mundane supplies, food rations, medical kits, spare parts, but one crate caught his eye. It was locked, its surface engraved with strange symbols that Cale didn't recognize. Intrigued, he pried it open carefully, revealing a small metallic object nestled inside protective foam padding. It was unlike anything Cale had ever seen. About the size of his palm, the artifact shimmered faintly, its surface smooth and cool to the touch. As he examined it closer, he noticed intricate patterns etched into the metal, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. Whatever it was, it clearly wasn't ordinary. Cale's pulse quickened. Could this be a piece of pre-fall technology? Something left behind by humanity's greatest minds? Before he could think further, a loud noise startled him. Footsteps echoed outside the bunker, heavy and deliberate. Cale froze, his mind racing. Who or what was out there? Aliens rarely ventured this far from the cities, but stranger things had happened. Slowly, he slipped the artifact into his backpack and grabbed a wrench from his belt. Ready to defend himself if necessary, the footsteps grew louder, accompanied by low voices speaking in a language Cale couldn't understand. Peering cautiously through a crack in the door, he saw two figures approaching, one tall and spindly, the other shorter and bulkier. Both wore uniforms marked with the insignia of the Galactic Federation. Cale's stomach sank. Federation officers didn't come here unless they were looking for something specific. Had they somehow learned about the bunker too? For several tense minutes, Cale remained perfectly still, listening as the officers searched nearby. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, their voices faded into the distance. Breathing a sigh of relief, Cale waited a little longer before slipping out of the bunker and making his way back toward the city. He knew he had to keep the artifact safe. If the Federation discovered what he had found, they might destroy it, or worse, use it against humanity. Back in his workshop, Cale set the artifact down on his workbench and began examining it more closely. The glowing patterns shifted slightly whenever he touched it, responding to his presence. It was almost as if the object was alive, waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. Cale spent hours running tests, scanning the artifact with every tool at his disposal. Though he couldn't decipher its full purpose yet, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary piece of tech. It was powerful and potentially dangerous. That night, unable to sleep, Cale sat alone in the dim light of his workshop, staring at the artifact. He thought about all the stories his grandfather used to tell, about how humanity had once reached for greatness only to have it snatched away. He thought about the ridicule and disdain they faced daily from the rest of the galaxy. And he thought about the future, not just his own, but the future of his entire species. What if this artifact held the key to changing everything? What if it could help humanity rise again, stronger and prouder than ever before? Cale didn't know the answers yet, but one thing was certain. He wouldn't let fear or doubt stop him from finding out. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Tomorrow, he decided he would take the artifact to someone who might understand it better. Someone who shared his vision of a brighter future for humanity. Until then, he vowed to protect it with his life. Because if there was one thing Cale Voss knew for sure, it was this. Humanity wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot.